Welcome back to Timeless Messages from the I Ching. This is Stephen. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're doing well. So today's question is, how can the viewers improve relationships with their family members? Improving relationships with family members. And the hexagram that came up is number 10, treading, also known as conduct. The creative heaven is on the top trigram, and the joyous lake, Tui, is on the bottom trigram. And so the name of the hexagram means, on the one hand, the right way of conducting oneself. Heaven, the father, is above, and the lake, the youngest daughter, is below. This shows the differences between high and low, upon which composure and correct social conduct depend. On the one hand, the word for the name of the hexagram, treading, means literally treading upon something. The small and cheerful, the lower trigram, Tui, treads upon the large and strong, Chen, the creative heaven. The direction of movement of the two primary trigrams is upward. The fact that the strong treads on the weak is not mentioned in the Book of Changes because it is taken for granted. For the weak to take a stand against the strong is not dangerous here, because it happens in good humor, Tui, and without presumption, so that the strong person is not irritated, but takes it all in good part. In this case, the strong man, which is a representative of the creative heaven. The judgment, treading upon the tail of the tiger. It does not bite the man, success. The situation is really difficult. That which is strongest and that which is weakest are very close together. The weak follows behind the strong and worries it. The strong, however, accepts and does not hurt the weak, because the contact is in good humor and is harmless. In terms of a human situation, one is handling wild, intractable people. Intractable meaning very disagreeable and stubborn. And so, person is handling these wild, stubborn, very disagreeable people. And in such an example or case, a person's purpose will be achieved if that person can behave with decorum or pleasant manners, because pleasant manners succeed even with irritable people. The image, heaven above, the lake below, the image of treading. Thus, the superior man discriminates between high and low, and thereby fortifies the thinking of the people. Heaven and the lake show a difference of elevation that is inherent in the natures of the two, hence no envy or jealousy arises. Among mankind also there are necessarily differences of elevation, and it's impossible to bring about universal equality. But it is important that differences in social rank should not be arbitrary and unjust. For if this occurs, envy and class struggle are the inevitable consequences. If, on the other hand, external differences in rank correspond with differences in one's inner worth, and if inner worth forms the criteria of external rank, people accept and order reigns in society. So this hexagram is really about having pleasant manners and watching your conduct. Well, this seems to make sense with all relationships, but perhaps particularly in family dynamics, which can tend to be a little bit more challenging at times. So simplicity, a person, if they can be content with simplicity and not try to push ahead too quickly or rapidly or expect too much, if we will allow ourselves to let many things pass without being fooled and not need to challenge someone on every single point, but realize that there are always going to be differences of opinion, and that's okay. One of the most important things that this hexagram builds upon is the idea of one's inner worth, and that's an inside job for everyone. We each determine our own inner worth. Inner worth is really not determined by anyone external to us. And so if we can enhance and strengthen our own sense of inner worth, then our relationships with others will naturally improve, because if we have a high estimation of our inner worth, which is not in any way related to arrogance, of course, it's more about just believing in the worth, the natural worth that you have as a human being. Just here you are, you have worth, you have value. And if you can allow others to have their own worth and value, and allow yourself to have that worth and value, then you're not seeking for value or worth from others, from, let's say, from family members. This happens a lot with seeking for value and love and acceptance and worth from parents or siblings or other family relationships, because we tend to be very formed by the family unit to which we grew up in. And this can be extended beyond just parents and siblings. It can go into uncles and aunts and cousins and so forth. It can be very broad, but it all has an effect upon us. So the idea of strengthening one's inner worth is very much emphasized by this, and it helps not only the individual who does this process or goes through this process on a regular basis to strengthen their inner worth, but it also strengthens society in large part, because then there's no struggle. No one's seeking their own inner value or worth from you in society, and you're not seeking it from others. Therefore, a lot of acting out is no longer going to happen because of that fact. In addition, the hexagram talks about a weak element, which would be the joyous lake, the youngest daughter, which follows the strong, which is the creative heaven. So it talks about this in this way: the strongest, that which is strongest and that which is weakest are close together, the heaven and the youngest daughter, the father and the youngest daughter. And the weak follows behind the strong and worries it. You can imagine, as any parent would experience, moments when they believe, oh, their youngest child or their youngest daughter has made some wonderful decisions, but also the child is very young and there's not a lot of maturity, there's not a lot of growth in terms of, they're not 40 years old, they're very young. And so they have much to learn. And sometimes the learning process can be difficult on the parental unit, and it can worry the parents. And this is similar to family relationships, in that even though these relationships are formative and they can be very loving and warm and positive, they can also have an effect upon even the strongest of all the trigrams, the heaven, the creative heaven, can have a weakening effect upon the creative heaven. And so if that can happen, then they can have a weakening or challenging effect. That is, family relationships can have a challenging effect upon anyone. But the information given here is that even though the strongest element is followed by this weak element, which tends to worry it, the strong accepts and does not hurt the weak, but instead knows that the contact is in good humor and is harmless. So there's a certain level of acceptance for any type of worry that's caused or any type of discomfort that's caused, because there's an understanding of the maturity level of this particular person who is much younger and less mature. So we see this necessity of people in family dynamics of needing to adopt this stronger creative heaven mentality and have more tolerance and not be too troubled or discouraged when there's a weak element that produces a less favorable effect in the family dynamic. So to not go too deep into that, to not be fooled, but to see it for what it's worth and to know that it's not something that's going to be terribly harmful, because it's actually something that's to be expected. There's always going to be differences of opinion between family members, and even so, the contact is in good humor, and if one can maintain a good and pleasant way of communicating, good conduct, pleasant manners, it talks about this as well, then success can be attained even with irritable people. So people that create irritation, or maybe even could produce a sense of hostility in us occasionally, sometimes that can happen with family members. And so the idea of having this mature attitude of letting things pass, not being fooled, but not needing to correct people on everything, in fact, perhaps not needing to correct them on quite a bit, unless what's absolutely necessary. And understanding that there's always going to be difficulties in family interactions, and if we can adopt positive and pleasant communications and discourse and pleasant manners, then we can succeed even with people that are irritable or hostile. So this really requires an entrance into the superior person's realm. The I Ching is always talking about the superior and inferior person. The superior person is one who is extending themselves into this patient, wise, loving, and kind person more and more of the time, rather than someone who is an inferior person, who is impatient, who's angry, who's argumentative, and so forth and so on, and creates all sorts of ripples and problems in their interactions. In addition, the idea of stepping on the tiger's tail, okay, treading upon the tail of the tiger, it does not bite the man, success. So to tread upon the tail of the tiger can produce unfavorable experiences, particularly if it's a real tiger. Even a small cat will be very displeased if you step on its tail. And this can elicit a very passionate response or reaction. In similar circumstances, when we have interactions with family members, sometimes we'll say something that will be taken the wrong way, or maybe we shouldn't have said something in the first place or done something in the first place, that then produces a very strong reaction and effect in another person, almost like you've stepped on their tail. You've disrespected them in a very hurtful way, and they're going to lash out at you and possibly bite you. So this is the kind of thing to try to avoid as much as possible. Try not to step on others' tails. Try to let them be, give them plenty of space, see them for what they are. Try to have as much tolerance and acceptance as you can cultivate. Not be a doormat, of course. If you need to step up and say something that's disturbing you that they've done or said, of course, it's important that you be able to verbalize that. But trying to keep peace and harmony as much as possible as well. And another avenue of looking at this is more from the basic themes presented here, the creative heaven. We're thinking about creativity, and we're thinking about the joyous lake. We're thinking about joyfulness. So if we can be creative, that will help to feed our joyousness, and as we are joyfully living life, that can help to feed our creativity. And the two attributes of joyousness and creativity can help to strengthen the character and the feeling of satisfaction and positive interaction with others. Because when you are able to express your creativity in a positive, constructive fashion, then you're not going to be engaged in creating destructive situations with others, such as family members. And if you can allow yourself to get this type of energy expressed, this creative energy to be expressed in meaningful ways, then you're going to help yourself and your relationships with others, because when creativity is not expressed, it turns into destructive energy. And if a person does not allow themselves to be creative, whatever that means to you, maybe it's making a meal, maybe it's writing down a story, maybe it's arranging flowers. It could be so many different things. Cutting the grass in a certain new, unique pattern. Creativity takes many, many different forms. But if you're able to allow your creative spirit, your creative heavenly spirit to express itself. This can really reward you in terms of your own peacefulness. And then when you have that peacefulness because of that expression of creativity, then you're going to be interacting with others, such as family members, in a much more peaceful way too. And finally, just to touch upon the idea that I spoke about maybe 5 or 10 minutes ago about inner worth, if you can cultivate the inner value and inner worth by yourself without seeking from family members or others for that, then you are going to be in a much stronger and more peaceful position, because you're not looking for something that you can give to yourself from others. You're not looking for something from others that you can actually give to yourself. You're giving yourself that inner worth. You're accepting it. You're cultivating it. You're allowing it. And this does wonders for your interactions with others. And also, it works for others as well, because they're not searching from you for that inner worth or that inner value. You already are attuned to that. You're connected to it. And so often we look to our family, our parents, siblings, and so forth, to help us establish a greater sense of our self-worth and our self-value. But this is oftentimes a mistake. We have to get this from ourselves. And this could be one of the best ways for you to approach having more peaceful relationships, as well as your creativity and expressing your creativity to allow your joyousness to unfold. All these are techniques, if you will, or just ways of being and living, with your inner worth, your inner value, your creative expression, which allows your joyousness to unfold, which when you're in these positive places, then you'll tend to have interactions that are peaceful and positive with others, such as your family members. So that is what I have for you today. I hope it helps you, and I would consider listening to this once again and maybe jotting down some of the most important messages, and try to incorporate these through your days in the next upcoming days and weeks, and see where you can go with it. Thanks for tuning in, and take care.